She was still there at 4 o'clock. Rivan had been told at noon, "There's a human in the lobby. She says she has an appointment." And he'd said he didn't have an appointment with anyone at noon and asked Marcus to handle it, which Marcus had apparently attempted and failed at. Because at 2 o'clock Marcus came back and said, "She's still there," with the expression of a man who had tried his professional best and was reporting a structural problem rather than a personal failing. Rivan had a council session at 2. He handled the council session. At 3:30, when the session broke, he asked again. Marcus said, "Still there, sir. She brought a thermos." He went to look. The lobby of the Ashvale Compound's administrative building was not designed for comfort. It was designed for the particular efficiency of a space that processed territory business, packed disputes, and external negotiations, which meant the chairs were functional rather than inviting, and the lighting was the fluorescent variety that made everyone look slightly unwell. The woman in the third chair from the left did not look unwell. She looked like someone who had decided this chair was hers for the duration and had made her peace with it completely. Brown hair, wire-rimmed glasses pushed up her nose, a canvas field jacket with more pockets than was strictly necessary. She had a thermos in one hand and a thick folder of documents open across her knees, and she was reading through them with the focused attention of someone doing work rather than waiting, as if the lobby was simply an office she had chosen for the afternoon. She looked up when he came in. She looked at him the way people usually did, the assessment, the size of him, the specific recalibration that happened when people encountered him outside of expectation. Then, she looked back at her documents. "Mr. Ashvale," she said. "I'm Lena Hart. I have federal conservation permits for the Northern Research Corridor your pack annexed on Monday. I'd like to discuss the terms of continued access. I don't have a meeting with you," he said. "You didn't have a meeting with me," she said. "Now you do." She looked up again. The hazel eyes behind the glasses were completely level. "I've been here 4 hours. I have another 3 in me if needed. I also have copies of the federal permit filings, the original boundary survey from 2019, and 12 months of research data demonstrating active wildlife migration through the corridor." She patted the folder. "I'm a reasonable person. I'd rather have a 30-minute conversation than a federal filing." Rivan looked at her. He had been Alpha King of Ashvale for 9 years. He had negotiated with rival pack leaders, state wildlife officials, 2 senators, and a federal judge. He had not, in 9 years, been sat down in his own lobby by a human woman with a thermos and told he now had a meeting. "My office," he said. 10 minutes. "I'll be here," she said, and went back to her documents. He went back upstairs and told Marcus to pull everything on the Northern Corridor annexation and had the specific unpleasant sensation of a man who had approved something 8 months ago at the recommendation of his territory manager without looking at it closely enough and was now being handed the consequences. He looked at the corridor map. He looked at the federal permit registry Marcus had pulled. The permits were real. 3 years old. Current. The research corridor ran directly through the new boundary line, and the human in his lobby had documentation he was going to have to actually engage with. He went back downstairs in 10 minutes, because he said 10 minutes, and he did not rearrange timelines to manage his own discomfort. She was already in the hallway outside his office when he got there, which meant she'd followed at a distance close enough to arrive first, which was either very organized or very deliberate, and from the 30 seconds of evidence he had, it was both. She came in. She sat in the chair across from his desk without being invited to, which people did not usually do. She opened the folder. "The corridor is 4.2 miles of primary elk migration route," she said. "Secondary habitat for 2 wolf packs. Your northern sub-pack uses it for winter movement, which means your own pack has an interest in keeping it intact. I've been documenting the migration for 3 years for the Gallatin Conservation Collaborative. The federal permits give me legal access for research purposes regardless of land ownership. The permits allow access, he said. They don't override PAC territorial protocols. No, she agreed. They don't, which is why I'm here instead of filing a federal access complaint, which I could do, and which would take 3 months to resolve and involve several agencies I think neither of us wants involved. She looked at him over the glasses. I'm proposing a research access agreement. Standard terms. I stay on marked corridors. I don't document PAC members without consent. I share relevant wildlife data with your territory management team. It costs you nothing, and it keeps the federal question out of it. She slid a single page across the desk. He looked at the page. It was thorough. It was also, he noted, already written in terms that would pass a legal review, which meant she'd done this before or had help, and the formatting suggested the former. You drafted this before you came, he said. I drafted it Sunday night, she said, when I found out about the annexation. You found out fast. I have sensors in the corridor. When the boundary markers went up, I got an alert. She folded her hands on the folder. I've been documenting this land for 3 years. I know every trail, every water source, every denning site. I know your northern subpac's winter movement patterns better than your territory manager does. A pause, measured and deliberate. I'm not saying that to be difficult. I'm saying it because it's true, and it's relevant to why this agreement benefits you. Riven looked at the agreement, then at her. I'll have our legal team review it, he said. Of course. She stood. She had the unhurried movement of someone who had gotten what she came for and was not going to perform gratitude about it. I'll need a response by Friday. If I don't have one, I file Monday. That's not how negotiations. It's how my negotiations work, she said pleasantly. I have active field research and a grant deadline. Friday. She picked up the folder and the thermos. Thank you for your time. She left. Riven sat at his desk and looked at the single page she'd left behind and had the distinct, specific sensation, one he had not had in a long time, of having been out-prepared. He didn't like it. He also, and this was the part he was not going to examine, thought, she's right about the territory manager. He picked up the page. He read it again. The legal team's review came back Wednesday afternoon. The agreement was sound, the federal permit claims were accurate, and the terms were, in the words of his head counsel, unusually fair for an adversarial filing. Riven read adversarial and thought about the way she'd said I'm not saying that to be difficult with the tone of someone who had been told many times that she was difficult, and had decided the accusation said more about the accuser. He signed the agreement. He did not send it Friday. He sent it Thursday morning, because waiting until Friday was performing a leverage he didn't actually have, and he had made enough decisions in the last year based on the appearance of strength to be tired of the habit. She showed up Thursday afternoon. Not because he'd told her to. He'd sent the signed agreement by email. Clean. No note. She showed up anyway, in the same field jacket, and Marcus waved her through this time without calling up, which Riven noted. You sent it early, she said in the doorway of his office. The review was complete. No reason to wait. She came in and sat in the same chair and looked at the signed page in her hand. Your legal team added a clause about PAC member privacy. Standard edition. It's reasonable. I'd already included it implicitly, but explicit is better. She set the page on the desk. I want to show you something. She opened the folder, a different one today, thicker, and pulled out a printed map. She spread it across his desk without asking, which she apparently did with desks as a general policy. The map was the northern corridor, hand-annotated in 3 colors of ink. He recognized the PAC boundary line, the research corridors, the federal permit zones. He did not recognize the overlay of migration patterns, denning sites, and movement data, which was more detailed than anything in his territory files. This is 3 years of data, she said. The blue lines are elk. The red are wolf, specifically your northern subpack. The green are the secondary predators. She pointed to a cluster of red lines in the northwest quadrant. This is a winter denning area your territory manager doesn't have in his files. I know because I checked your public territory registry last year when I was updating mine. He looked at the map. The denning area was real. He knew that terrain, had run it himself. The fact that it wasn't in the territory files was a gap he was going to address privately and was not going to acknowledge in front of her. Why are you showing me this? He said. Because the access agreement gives me the right to share relevant wildlife data with your territory team, she said. This is relevant. Your northern subpack's winter route runs through a section of the corridor that has active elk movement. If you develop that section, which your expansion plan apparently includes, you'll push the elk west, the wolves will follow, and your subpack will lose winter range. She looked at him steadily. I'm not telling you what to do with your territory. I'm telling you what the data says. You've looked at our expansion plan. It's in the county development filings. Public record. She pulled another page. Section 4, subsection C. He looked at subsection C. He had approved the expansion plan 8 months ago. He had not looked at Section 4, subsection C, because his territory manager had handled the specifics, and he had been dealing with the council split and the aftermath of the decision that had caused it, and he had trusted the process. He was looking at the results of that trust now. I'll have my team review the development plan, he said. Specifically Section 4, she said. I understood the implication. She looked at him. He looked at her. There was a quality to the silence, not uncomfortable, not comfortable, the charged neutral of two people who had found the outer edges of each other's positions and were recalibrating. You're very organized, he said. I work alone in the field for weeks at a time, she said. Organization is survival. How long have you been in Bozeman? 3 years, since the research grant started. She closed the folder. Before that, Missoula. Before that, a few other places. Family here? She looked at him with the specific look of someone who had been asked this question and had a practiced answer and was deciding whether to use it. No family anywhere, she said. It's just me and the data. He said nothing. She picked up the folder. I'll be in the corridor Friday morning, she said. Sector 7, East Side. I'll log my entry with your territory office. She stood. Thank you for the prompt turnaround. She left. He sat with the map she'd left on his desk. She'd left it deliberately. He understood, the same way she'd left the agreement page, giving him things without making him ask for them, and looked at the denning site in the northwest quadrant. He was going to have to look at the full development plan. He was going to have to look at it carefully. He was going to have to do it before his territory manager noticed he was doing it and understood why. He picked up the map and folded it with the specific care of someone handling something that was useful and slightly inconvenient in equal measure. He went to the corridor Friday morning. Not to check on her, he told himself this and believed approximately 60% of it. He went because Sector 7 East bordered the denning site she'd marked on the map, and he had not run that terrain since spring, and the development plan review was going to require current ground assessment. He found her at 6:15, in the gray pre-dawn, crouched at the edge of a tree line with a camera the size of a small child aimed at something in the meadow he couldn't immediately see. She heard him coming. He was quiet for his size, but she had the awareness of someone who had spent years in terrain where noise mattered, and she turned her head just enough to clock him without moving the camera. There's a herd at the tree line, she said, very low. 11 elk, 2 calves. They've been here 20 minutes. Don't move fast. He stopped. He looked at the meadow. The elk were visible now. He'd been focused on her and missed them, which was unusual, which he also filed away. The two calves were close to a large cow, moving in the tentative way of animals still calibrating their legs. He stood still. They watched the herd for 10 minutes. She took photographs in the specific methodical way of someone documenting, rather than composing, systematic, working through the group, occasionally adjusting position by inches with the patience of someone who had done this in worse weather and worse light. The herd moved off into the trees. She lowered the camera. "Calves are early this year," she said, standing. "Third set I've documented in this sector in 2 weeks. The winter was mild." She made a note on the pad she had in her jacket pocket. "What are you doing out here?" "Ground assessment," he said, "for the development review." She looked at him. The glasses were fogged slightly at the edges from the cold. "You're reviewing it yourself?" "Yes. Not delegating to your territory manager, no." She held the look for a moment. He could see her working through the implication that he was doing it himself because the territory manager was the problem, or part of it, and choosing not to say what she'd worked out. "The northwest corner is 20 minutes that way," she said, pointing. "The Denning site. If you're assessing, you should see it. I know where my territory is. You know where it is on a map," she said, with no particular edge, just the accuracy of someone distinguishing between two different kinds of knowledge. "Come see it." She started walking. He followed, which he did not decide to do so much as find himself doing, and they walked in the early morning cold through terrain that was his by name and hers by accumulated knowledge, and she pointed things out as she went, not lecturing, just noting, the habit of someone who had learned to see specifically. The Denning site was a natural depression in the northwest hillside, sheltered by a rock outcropping, with a water source 20 yards east. She'd marked 3 separate den entrances on her map. In the morning light, he could see them clearly. "The development plan routes a service road 40 meters south of here," she said. "Active construction would push them out for at least 1 season, probably 2. If they den elsewhere, the pack's winter hunt range shifts." She looked at him. "That's your sub-pack's primary winter food source in this sector." He looked at the dens. He looked at the site. He thought about the council session 8 months ago where he'd approved the expansion without reading Section 4 subsection C because he'd been managing a fracture in his own leadership and trusting the wrong person to handle the details. "The road can be rerouted," he said. 80 meters north puts it clear of the denning range and the primary water source. He was not surprised to find, already worked this out. It adds about a 1/4 mile to the route but avoids the ecological impact. "You've drawn this up. I have a suggested reroute, yes." She said it without apology. "You don't have to use it, it's just what the data supports." He looked at the Denning site. "Send it to my territory office," he said. "I'll send it to you directly," she said. "Your territory manager is the one who filed the original route." The morning was cold and the light was coming up gray through the fir trees, and she was looking at him with the steady hazel eyes of someone who had done her homework and was offering him a way to correct a mistake without making it a confrontation, and he was standing in his own territory being shown the parts of it she knew better than he did. "Fine," he said. "Direct." She nodded. She was already moving again, further into the corridor, her camera back up. "The wolf pack usually comes through this sector between 7 and 8, she said. "If you want to stay." He had a 7:30 briefing. "I can stay until 7:15, he said. She didn't comment on this. She just moved to a better position and he moved with her, and they stood in the cold morning in the territory that was his and also hers in a different way, and at 7:05 the northern sub-pack came through the eastern edge of the meadow, 6 wolves, the alpha pair in front, moving with the fluid certainty of animals in familiar land. He watched them. He had run with this sub-pack before, in his wolf form on territory checks. Seeing them through a human's eyes was different, smaller, further away, but also somehow more complete. He could see the whole of them. She was photographing systematically, methodically, the same way she'd done the elk. "They're healthy," she said, low. "Yes, the alpha female is pregnant." Second litter. She adjusted the lens. "Spring pups if the weather holds." He looked at the alpha female. She was right. "You know this pack," he said. "I know all the packs in this corridor," she said. "It's my job." A pause. "I know yours too. Your northern sub-pack has been using this corridor for at least the 3 years I've been here, probably longer. It's part of their identity as much as it's part of mine." He looked at her profile in the gray morning light. The concentration, the careful attention, the way she watched the wolves with the specific focus of someone who saw them as real and individual rather than as data points or threats. He said nothing. At 7:12 he left for his briefing. She was already focused back on the pack and acknowledged his departure with a brief nod. And he walked back through the corridor alone, thinking about a woman who knew his territory better than his territory manager did, and had come to him with data instead of lawyers, and had not, in 3 meetings, been afraid of him once. He sent her the development plan, all of it, not just Section 4, the whole document, 240 pages with his territory manager's annotations in the margins. He sent it Thursday evening with a single line: "Your assessment of sections 4C through 4F would be useful." She sent back a 20-page memo by Saturday morning. He read it twice. It was thorough in the way her corridor map had been thorough, not aggressive, just complete. The documentation of someone who had looked at everything and noted what was relevant and left out what wasn't. She had flagged 6 sections. 4 were correctable without significant cost. 2 were structural problems that would require the plan to be substantially revised. He sat with the memo and the specific discomfort of being right about his suspicion that the plan was flawed and wrong about everything he'd done with that suspicion for 8 months, which was nothing. He called her. She answered on the second ring, which meant she was awake. It was 7 a.m. and probably already in the field. "The memo," he said. "Yes." Her voice had the slight wind sound of being outside. "Sections 4D and 4E are the significant ones. The rest are adjustable." 4D requires redesigning the water management system. "It requires redesigning the water management system," she agreed. "The current design routes run off into the east tributary. That's the primary water source for the Denning site and the lower Meadow Elk Range. You'll lose both if it goes in as drawn. The redesign will cost more or less than a federal environmental violation." She said it without heat. Just the cost-benefit directness he was starting to understand was her default register. He was quiet for a moment. "Who drew up the original plan?" "Your territory manager's signature is on the filing," she said. "But the engineering firm is Blackridge Environmental." A pause. "That's Cole Merritt's company." He went very still. "Cole Merritt. Alpha of the Blackridge pack, whose territory bordered Ashevale's southern edge and who had been making quiet territorial maneuvers for 2 years that Riven had been managing without confrontation." "You checked the engineering firm," he said. "I check everything," she said. "It's in the county filing. Public record." He stood at his office window looking at the Gallatin Range in the early morning light and turned this over. Merritt's company drawing up an environmental plan that would damage Ashevale's own territory. The territory manager whose annotations ran through the plan. The council split 8 months ago over the expansion decision. "How long have you known?" he said. "About Blackridge Environmental? Since I filed for a copy of the development plan 2 weeks ago." A pause. "About the rest of it, the territorial maneuvering, the pattern. I've been documenting boundary movements in this valley for 3 years. I see things that don't have names yet." Her voice was careful. I wasn't sure what I was seeing until the annexation. The annexation was the first move that required a response. From me. From you, she said. Which meant coming to you. He turned this over. You came to file an access complaint, he said. I came to file an access complaint, she agreed, and to see if you were the kind of person who could hear what the data actually said. And? A pause that was doing something. You went to Sector 7 yourself, she said. You're reviewing the plan yourself. You called me at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Another pause. I'm updating my assessment. He did not know what to do with that, so he set it aside. I need the full 3 years of corridor data, he said. I'll compile it. No hesitation. Give me until Monday. Monday, he said. And then, because she had driven 4 hours to sit in his lobby for 4 hours and had been right about everything she'd brought him, thank you. The pause this time had a different quality. You're welcome, she said, and the slight wind sound moved across the line, and he heard her boots on gravel as she kept walking, and he stood at the window with the memo in his hand and the specific, uncomfortable clarity of a man who had made a wrong decision 8 months ago and had been handed, by the most unlikely possible source, the exact shape of what he needed to correct it. She came to the compound Monday with a hard drive and a request. The hard drive had 3 years of corridor data, movement patterns, habitat surveys, water source mapping, species counts, seasonal variations. She handed it to him in the lobby and said she needed 2 hours with his territory files to cross-reference her data against his pack's recorded movements. He gave her a conference room. He told Marcus to let her into the relevant file systems. He went back to his own work and was aware, in the specific ambient way of being aware of things in a building, that she was 2 floors down doing something methodical and useful with information that could determine the shape of the next 5 years of Ashevale territory management. At noon he went down. She was at the conference table with her laptop, 2 printed maps, and what appeared to be a system for the documents that made sense from inside and looked like chaos from the door. She had, he noticed, found the break room coffee, which was the compound's one significant institutional failure. The machine was ancient, and the result was technically coffee, in the way that technical compliance met a definition without embodying its spirit. She was drinking it anyway. That's terrible coffee, he said. I've had worse. She didn't look up from the screen. In the field I drink whatever's in the thermos from the morning before. Relative to that, this is fine. He poured a cup. It was in fact terrible. He drank it because she was drinking it and he was not going to make a separate production of it. He sat down across from her. What are you finding? He said. She turned the laptop toward him. The screen showed a movement overlay, her wolf data mapped against his pack's territory records. The correlation was visible immediately, and so was the gap, a section of the northern corridor where his records showed minimal activity and her data showed consistent movement. Your records have almost nothing for this section, she said, pointing. My data shows regular movement, monthly, sometimes more. It's your northern subpack's secondary route. They use it when the primary route is high snow. That should be in the territory records. It's not. She looked at him, which means either it wasn't documented or it was removed. He looked at the gap in the records. His territory manager had been managing the northern corridor files, the same section the development plan routes through. He said, Yes. He was quiet for a moment. She waited. She was good at waiting, he'd noticed, the specific patience of someone who understood that silence was not a vacuum to fill. I trusted him, Revan said. Not to her, really. Just out loud, the way things needed to be said sometimes to become real. He'd been with the pack 12 years. People change their loyalties for different reasons, she said without judgment, just the acknowledgement of a fact. Money, ideology, resentment. It doesn't always look like betrayal while it's happening. He looked at her. You sound like you know. She was quiet for a moment. My father worked for the county land office. He was the only person in the office who flagged a development project that would have damaged protected wetlands. She looked at her coffee. The developer was connected to some powerful people. My father was moved to a different department, then let go. A year later, he was in a boundary dispute on land he'd flagged. Wrong place. Wrong time. Wrong politics. She set down the mug. He died when I was 12. The people who made the decisions that put him there never answered for any of it. The conference room was quiet. "That's why you do this," he said. "That's part of why." She looked at the screen. "I'm also just very good at it." He almost said something. She turned back to the laptop before he decided what, and they sat in the conference room with the bad coffee and the 3 years of data, and she talked him through what she'd found in the specific, clear-eyed way she did everything, and he listened with the focused attention of a man who had learned, in the last 2 weeks, what it cost to not listen closely enough. At 2, she packed up the hard drive. "I'll send you a full cross-referenced report by Wednesday," she said. "It'll have the movement gaps documented with my data as corroboration." "That would hold in a PAC tribunal," he said. "I know." She picked up her jacket. "That's why I'm giving it to you." He walked her to the door. The main door, not the lobby, the one that led to the parking area. She had a truck, older, with a roof rack for equipment. She unlocked it and put the hard drive in the back seat with the specific care of someone handling something that had taken years to accumulate. "Heart," he said. She turned. "The corridor," he said. "The work you've done there. He stopped, because he was about to say something that required more than the vocabulary he usually deployed for professional acknowledgement, and he wasn't sure he had the right words. "It matters." She looked at him for a moment. "Yes," she said simply. "It does." She got in the truck. He stood in the parking area in the cold afternoon and watched her drive out the gate and was aware, in a way that had not been there 2 weeks ago, and was now very much there, of the specific distance between the gate and wherever she was going. She found the access point on a Wednesday. She called him from the field, which she had not done before. Their contact had been email, meetings, the occasional direct call about specific data points. This was different. He knew from the first second that it was different. "There's a fresh cut in the fence line," she said. "North edge of Sector 3. Not weather damage, deliberate. The posts were cut at the base. Not broken." Sector 3 was Ashvale's furthest northern boundary. It abutted Blackridge territory. "How fresh?" he said. "Within the week. The ground around the posts is still disturbed." A pause. Wind sound. "There are vehicle tracks. Heavy. Off-road. They came from the north side." "Are you still there?" "Yes. Get back to the main trail," he said. "Now." A silence. "I'm a quarter mile from my truck," she said. "Walk." Another silence, this one with a different quality. She was deciding something. He heard her moving, boots on frozen ground, the rhythm of someone walking fast without running. "I'm walking," she said. He was already standing, already reaching for the keys to his truck, doing the mental geometry of how long to Sector 3 from the compound. "Don't stop," he said. "Don't look back. Just keep talking to me." "I'm fine," she said. "I know," he said. "Talk anyway." She talked. She told him about the fence cut, the specific kind of tool, the angle of the post ends, the depth of the vehicle tracks. She talked in the specific, focused way of someone converting anxiety into information, and he drove and listened and watched the odometer and did not tell her that a deliberate fence cut on the northern boundary, the week after he'd started reviewing the development plan, was not something he was going to interpret as coincidence. He reached the Sector 3 trailhead in 22 minutes. She was at the edge of the parking area when he got out of the truck, and he looked at her, field jacket, glasses, the color that had come into her face from walking fast in cold air, and something in him settled that had been unsettled since the phone rang. "I'm fine," she said again, reading his face. "I can see that," he said. "You drove very fast." "I drove appropriately." She looked at him for a moment with the hazel eyes that didn't miss things. He held it steadily, which he did with most things, and she looked away first, which she also did with most things. "Show me the fence," he said. They went together. She walked in front on the narrow trail, pointing out the markers she'd noted: disturbed ground, a broken branch at the wrong angle, the kind of details that were invisible if you didn't know to look. She knew to look. 3 years in this corridor had made her fluent in its specific vocabulary. The fence cut was exactly as she'd described: clean, deliberate, the kind of job done by someone who knew what they were doing and didn't need to be fast about it. The vehicle tracks ran north, back toward the Blackridge boundary. He crouched and looked at the tracks. 2 vehicles, he said. Heavy. They came to look, not to move anything, scouting. For what? He looked at the northern tree line. Then at her. How much of the development plan's weakness is visible from the Blackridge side of the boundary? She was quiet for a moment, working through it. The water management issue routes run off toward a shared watershed, she said slowly. If Blackridge Environmental designed it, they knew the damage it would cause. If the damage happens, to the Elk Range, the Wolf Corridor, Ashvale loses key territory resources. That weakens pack cohesion. And a weakened pack invites challenge, he said. She looked at him. He's been planning this for longer than the annexation. Yes, he stood. The annexation was bait. Get me to expand north, use my own territory manager to route the development wrong, wait for the pack to fracture from the damage. He looked at the cut fence. I wasn't supposed to notice until it was too late. You noticed because I came to your lobby, she said. I noticed because you didn't leave when Marcus told you to. She almost smiled. Not quite. The infrastructure of it. The same architectural suggestion he'd seen twice before and was cataloging without meaning to. Your territory manager, she said. You need to move before he realizes you've been reviewing the plan. I know. He looked at the fence. I need to do it quietly. If Merritt knows I've identified the problem before I've addressed it, he'll accelerate. What do you need? He looked at her. She was standing in the cold with her hands in her jacket pockets and her data hard drive in her truck, and 3 years of evidence that was better than anything his own team had produced. And she was asking what he needed with the directness of someone who had already decided to help and was waiting for the specifics. The full report, he said. Every gap in the territory records, every movement pattern, the fence cut documented with photographs and GP's coordinates. He held her gaze. And I need you to be careful. If Merritt has someone inside my pack, they may know you've been here. She held the look. I've been careful my whole life, she said. It's how I'm still here. He believed her. That was the thing. He looked at her and believed her completely. And that was not a thing he did with people he'd known for 2 weeks, and he was aware of it and was not going to address it in a field in Sector 3. Wednesday, he said. The report. Wednesday, she said. They walked back to the trailhead together, and the cold was coming down, and the light was going, and he was aware of her beside him in the way he'd been aware of her in the corridor at 6:15 in the morning, and neither of them said anything about it. And neither of them needed to. He called the emergency council session on Thursday. He did it cleanly. No warning to his territory manager. No signal that anything had changed. The appearance of a routine session on the development plan review. His territory manager, whose name was Derek Holt, and who had been with Ashvale 12 years, sat in his usual seat and looked at the agenda with the expression of someone who had not been tipped off. Revan waited until the routine items were through. Then he put Lena's report on the table. This is a 3-year independent wildlife survey of the Northern Corridor, he said, cross-referenced against our territory records. I want to walk through the discrepancies. He watched Holt's face. He'd been watching it since the session started, the specific attention of a man who knew what he was looking for and had been trained to read the thing underneath the performance. Holt was good. The reaction was minimal, a slight tightening around the eyes, a fractional stillness. But Riven had been alpha for 9 years. Minimal was enough. He walked through the report. He did it methodically, the way Lena had taught him, not aggressive, just complete, letting the data make the case. The missing movement records, the fence cut documentation, the Blackridge environmental connection, the water management design that would damage Ashvale's own territory. When he got to the engineering firm, Holt said, "I can explain the Blackridge connection. I know you can," Riven said. "I'm not asking you to." The room went quiet. He looked at Holt steadily. "You've been with this pack 12 years. You're good at your job. Whatever Merritt offered you, or threatened you with, I'm not interested in it right now." He kept his voice even. "What I'm interested in is whether you have given him any information about this review." A long silence. "No," Holt said. Then, the fence cut. He asked me to confirm the boundary was clear for a scout. When? Saturday. Riven did the math. 2 days after he'd called Lena about the development plan. 2 days after he'd asked for the full data. He had moved fast enough, barely. "Thank you for telling me," he said. He meant it. "You're on administrative leave effective now. I'll want a full debrief next week, with council present." He looked at the rest of the council. "The development plan is suspended pending full review. I'll be handling the Northern Territory personally until further notice." He paused. "I should have been handling it personally from the beginning. That's on me." He had not said that out loud before. Not to the council, not to anyone. The words cost him something, the specific expenditure of a pride he'd been maintaining at increasing cost, and the council received it with the silence of people who had been waiting for it. "The Merritt situation," said his second, a woman named Kara, "requires a response." "Yes," Riven said. "I'm working on it." After the session, he called Lena. She answered in 2 rings. "How did it go?" Holt confirmed the scout. "Saturday, 2 days after I called you." A pause. "So Merritt knows you're reviewing but doesn't know how much you have." "Correct." He was at the window again, his window, the compound, the Gallatin Range in the late afternoon. "The fence cut documentation is what gave me the clean case. Without that, it was circumstantial. I found the fence cut," she said, simply, the way she said most things that were true. "You found the fence cut," he said. "Thank you." The silence after that had the specific quality of something unspoken that was taking up increasing space. "Riven," she said. She had started using his name 3 days ago, a shift he had registered and said nothing about. "Yes. Merritt is going to move now," she said. "Once he realizes Holt is out of position, he'll know something changed. I know. What's your play?" He had been thinking about this since Thursday morning. "I need to meet with him. Directly, on my terms, on my ground, before he can manufacture a situation that forces my hand." He paused. "I need to know the corridor well enough to have that conversation from a position of complete information. I can brief you," she said. "Everything I have, all of it. I know you can." He paused. "Come to the compound. Tomorrow morning. Bring everything." A beat. 7? She said. 7, he said. He stood at the window after she hung up and looked at the range and thought about a woman who had sat in his lobby for 4 hours with a thermos and a folder and had turned out to be the most useful person in his territory, and the thing he was not addressing because they were in the middle of something that required his full professional attention was getting harder to not address. He was aware of this. He set it aside. He had a territory to manage. She briefed him for 3 hours. Everything, the full corridor survey, the Blackridge movement patterns she'd documented over 3 years, the fence cut analysis, the water system impact projections, the timeline she'd reconstructed of the development plan manipulation. She was a better briefer than anyone on his staff, which he was not going to say out loud and which she probably knew anyway. When she was done, he had a complete picture. She packed up her laptop and her maps with the efficiency of someone who had briefed and been dismissed before and was prepared for it. "Stay," he said. She stopped. "There's more to discuss," he said, because that was true, and also because she was already at the door and he was not going to examine the relationship between those two facts. "The merit meeting. I want your read on his likely approach." She came back. She sat down. She gave him her read on merit, thorough, specific, based on 3 years of watching territorial behavior in the corridor, and he listened and asked questions, and they went back and forth the way they had started to do. The rhythm of two people who had found they thought differently enough to be useful to each other and similarly enough to build on it. At noon, Marcus brought lunch without being asked, which meant Marcus was paying attention, which was fine. She looked at the food. "You didn't have to. Marcus did it," Riven said. "Take the sandwich." She took the sandwich. They ate in the conference room with the map still spread on the table and the Gallatin Range visible through the window, and the silence was the comfortable kind, the kind that didn't need anything from either of them. "You said you've never had family here," he said. "In Montana." She looked at the maps. "No. The conservation work, you could do it anywhere. Why? Stay." She was quiet for a moment. "I stayed because I started to know the land," she said. "The corridor, the packs, the migration patterns. It takes years to know a place that well. Knowing it felt like..." She paused. "It felt like belonging to something that didn't require anything from me except attention." He looked at her. "That's the loneliest version of belonging I've ever heard," he said. She looked at him sharply, and then the sharpness softened into something that was not quite surprise and not quite recognition. The expression of someone who had been accurately described and was deciding whether to be annoyed about it. "Maybe," she said. "The pack," he said. "The northern sub-pack. You know them individually. The alpha female is Greystone. I named her. The male is Dusk. He has a distinctive gray patch on his left shoulder. The 3 yearlings are Silver, Creek, and the one I call Stubborn because she goes her own direction about 40% of the time." She looked at her sandwich. "I know I'm not pack. I know naming them doesn't make them mine, but I've watched them for 3 years and they've," she paused, "tolerated my presence. That's its own kind of relationship." "It is," he said. She looked at him. "You run with them sometimes. I've seen the tracks." He had not thought she'd noticed. He said nothing. "Large wolf, alone, moving parallel to the pack, but not with them," she said. "Consistent direction, consistent timing. The sub-pack doesn't react. They know the presence." She held his gaze. "That's you." "Yes," he said. "Why alone?" He looked at the window. "The same reason you walk the corridor alone," he said. "Some things require the absence of witnesses." She was quiet for a moment. "Grief?" she said. He looked at her. "The way you run with them but not in them," she said carefully. "It has the shape of grief, like being close to something you've decided you can't have." The conference room was very quiet. He had not been described accurately, in that specific way, by anyone in recent memory. He looked at her and she looked back at him, and the distance between them in the conference room was not very much, and was also, for reasons that were becoming harder to maintain, more distance than he wanted. "Lena," he said. She was already looking at him. I'm in the middle of a territorial crisis, he said. Merritt is going to move within the week. My pack is watching me. The timing is wrong. I know the timing, she said. I'm not saying no, he said, which was more direct than he'd planned. I'm saying not yet. She looked at him for a long moment. Okay, she said. She went back to her sandwich. He went back to the maps, and the thing that was between them stayed where it was, patient, taking up its specific amount of space, waiting for the timing to be right. She drove to Blackridge. Not to Merritt's compound. She wasn't reckless, she was strategic, and those were different things. She drove to the county records office in the town that bordered Blackridge territory and spent 4 hours pulling every public filing associated with Cole Merritt and Blackridge Environmental in the last 5 years. She had not told Raven she was doing this. She had not told him because he would have said it was dangerous, and he would have been right, and she would have done it anyway, and having the conversation first would have cost time they didn't have. What she found took her another 2 hours to map. Blackridge Environmental had filed development plans in 3 other PAC territories in the last 4 years. 2 of those PACs had subsequently experienced significant territorial disputes. 1 had lost land. The pattern was visible once you were looking for it, the same water management errors, the same routing through sensitive habitat, the same quiet degradation of territorial resources that weakened a pack from the inside before the external pressure began. She called him from the parking lot. He picked up on the first ring, which meant he'd been waiting. "Where are you?" he said. "County Records Office. Rimrock." A silence. "That's Blackridge territory," he said. "Adjacent to," she said. "I'm in a public county office. I'm fine." She could hear him deciding whether to be angry and choosing, instead, to be strategic, which was the right call and which she appreciated. "I have Merritt's full development history across 5 PAC territories. It's a pattern. He's done this before. How many PACs? 3 confirmed, 1 suspected. The methodology is the same. Design the environmental damage in, route it through sensitive habitat, wait for the territorial resource loss to create internal fracture." She looked at her notes. The Eastfield PAC lost their southern wetlands 2 years ago. They've had 3 council challenges since. The Harrow PAC lost their primary elk corridor, the Harrow Challenge, he said. "That was Merritt. Yes. I thought it was internal." "It was internal," she said. "He made it internal. That's the play." She looked at the county building. "Riven, he's been doing this for 10 years. The Ashevale expansion was not opportunistic. He's been positioning for this specifically." The silence on the line had a particular quality, the focused stillness of a man rearranging a picture that had just gotten significantly larger. "Send me everything," he said. "I'm sending it now." She was already attaching files. "There's more. His environmental firm has a subsidiary that does PAC boundary surveys. He's been contracted by 4 of the PACs he later targeted. He surveyed their weaknesses for them," Riven said, "and then used the information." "Yes. Has he surveyed Ashevale?" "Not directly. But your territory manager filed a boundary update 2 years ago with a county office that uses Blackridge Environmental as a contractor." She paused. They had access to the update. He was quiet for a long moment. "Lena," he said. "Yes." "Come back," he said. She looked at the county building, at the parking lot, at the Rimrock Hills going blue in the late afternoon light. "I'm already driving," she said. She was back at the compound in 40 minutes. He was in the parking area when she got there, not performing impatience, just present. The way he'd been present at Sector 3 when she'd called about the fence cut. The specific quality of a man who had decided showing up was not optional. She got out of the truck. He looked at her, the full assessment, checking, and she let him because it was reasonable, and because the way he did it was not intrusive, but careful, the distinction mattering to her in a way she was filing away. "You should have told me," he said. You would have said it was dangerous. It was dangerous. I know the difference between dangerous and unacceptable risk, she said. County records office, business hours, public building, dangerous the way most useful things are dangerous. He looked at her for a moment. Come inside, he said. I need to make some calls before Merritt realizes what you found. She came inside. She sat in his office while he made calls, 3 of them, each one brief and direct, to contacts she understood were other pack leaders. She listened and assembled the picture. He was building a coalition, not just defending Asheville, but making the case that Merritt's pattern was a regional threat, that the documentation she'd found made it verifiable, that collective response changed the calculus. He was good at this. She watched him work and thought, this is what he is when he's operating correctly, when the ground under him is solid. The 3rd call ended. He set the phone down and looked at her. 3 pack leaders will meet, he said. Friday. Here. That's fast. Merritt will move before the weekend. He knows Holt is out of position. He looked at the window. I need the full 5-pack documentation ready for Friday. Every instance, full methodology, the pattern laid out so it's undeniable. I can have it by Thursday night, she said. I know you can. He looked at her. I need you at the meeting. She looked at him. You're the one with the documentation, he said. They'll have questions I can't answer. You can. I'm human, she said, in a room full of pack leaders. Yes, he said, and you've been in my territory doing the work my own team should have been doing for 3 years, and you drove to Blackridge County Records on your own initiative and found the pattern that changes this from a bilateral dispute to a regional accountability case. He held her gaze. You're not in the room because you're human. You're in the room because you're the most qualified person for it. She looked at him for a long moment. Thursday night, she said. Full documentation. Thursday night, he said. She left. He watched her truck leave the parking area and stood at the window with the last light going off the range and thought about a woman who drove alone to adjacent enemy territory on a Tuesday afternoon and called him from the parking lot like it was a reasonable thing to have done. Which it was, which was the problem. Which was that he kept finding her reasonable and correct and present in his thoughts in a way that had stopped being manageable sometime around the Sector 7 morning. She arrived at 6:30 with the documentation and coffee. Good coffee, not the compounds machine, a thermos from the place in Bozeman she apparently went to before field work, the specific smell of it reaching him before she was fully through the door. He looked at the thermos. The compound coffee is terrible, she said. I know. She set it on the desk. She opened her bag and pulled out a bound report, printed, tabbed, the full 5-pack documentation laid out in the specific, clear language of someone who had prepared for an audience that would have questions. He looked at the report. Then, at her. You bound it, he said. Pack leaders respond better to physical documents than digital, she said. It signals permanence. She looked at him. How are you? The question landed differently than he expected. Not are you ready or is everything in place, just how are you? The specific direct inquiry of someone who understood the difference between the operational and the human. I've been wrong for 8 months, he said, and I'm about to stand in front of 3 pack leaders and explain how wrong I've been in order to make the case against the person who used my wrongness against me. She looked at him steadily. That's accurate. Yes. Is that what you'd do if one of them came to you with the same situation? He thought about it. Yes. Then you know it's the right call, she said. The part that costs you something is the part that makes it credible. He looked at her. You're very good at this, he said. At what? Saying the thing I'm already thinking but won't say to myself. She almost smiled, the full version this time, something he'd been waiting to see without quite knowing he'd been waiting. You told me that once before. It's consistently true. She picked up her coffee. She'd brought one for herself too, separate cup, and stood at the window looking at the range in the early morning, and he stood at the desk and looked at her, and the thing he'd put in the conference room 8 days ago and told himself to wait on was very present and very done waiting. "Lena," he said. She turned. He crossed the room. He stopped 2 feet from her because that was the distance she kept, the careful distance of someone who had learned not to assume, and he looked at her and said, "I said the timing was wrong." "You did," she said. "The meeting is in 3 hours, he said. The territory situation is not resolved. The timing is still technically wrong." "Yes," she said. "I find that I don't care," he said. She looked at him for 1 beat. 2, the hazel eyes doing the thing they did when she was processing something she'd already half decided and was confirming. She closed the remaining distance. She kissed him with the direct, purposeful energy she brought to everything, both hands on his jacket, and he kissed her back with 3 weeks of carefully managed restraint and the specific relief of someone who had been right about something and is finally allowed to act on it. She pulled back. She looked at him. "The meeting," she said. 3 hours, he said. "We should review the documentation." "Yes," he said. Neither of them moved immediately. "Riven," she said. "Yes." After the meeting, she said. "We're going to have a different conversation." "Yes," he said. "We are." She stepped back. She picked up the bound report. She sat down at the desk and opened it to the first tab and said, "The Harrow Pack case is your strongest opener. It's the most documented, and the timeline is clearest." And he sat across from her, and they reviewed the documentation for 3 hours, and he was aware of her the entire time in a way that was not new and was not going away and was, he had decided, not a problem. The 3 pack leaders arrived at 9. Alpha Diane Reyes of the Clearwater Pack, 50, silver-streaked, the particular authority of someone who had been right more often than not and knew how to use it quietly. Alpha James Vanthor of the Harrow Pack, broad, careful, carrying the specific wariness of someone who had lost something to exactly this methodology. Alpha Sarah O'Keki of the Eastfield Pack, youngest of the 3, precise, the kind of anger that had been refined by 2 years of aftermath into something functional. Rivan introduced Lena as the researcher whose independent documentation had identified the pattern. He did it straightforwardly, without qualification, not a human researcher, not an outside consultant, just her name and her work and what it had found. She presented standing at the head of the table. He watched the room while she talked. He watched Vanthor's face when she put up the Harrow documentation, the recognition, then the anger that came after recognition, then the specific focus of a man who understood he was looking at what had been done to him, laid out with evidence he hadn't had. He watched Reyes's expression sharpen when Lena showed the subsidiary contractor connection. He watched O'Keki lean forward when the timeline came up, the sequencing of manipulation, the deliberate patience of it, the years of positioning. Lena was not performing. She was not trying to convince. She was presenting what was there and letting the weight of it do the work, and the weight of it was considerable. Questions came at the end, and she answered them with the directness she brought to everything, not hedging, not inflating, acknowledging the limits of the documentation where they existed, and the strength of it where it was solid. Vanthor said, "The Harrow situation. We thought it was internal." "It was internal," she said. "He engineered the internal fracture. That's what makes it difficult to see while it's happening. The visible cause is always domestic. How did you see it?" "I've been documenting the corridor for 3 years," she said. "Territorial behavior, movement patterns, boundary shifts. When you watch long enough, patterns that aren't visible in single incidents become visible in sequence." She looked at him steadily. "You weren't looking at the wrong things. You were looking at the right things in the wrong time frame." Vanthor looked at Riven. She should have been in the room a long time ago, he said. Yes, Riven said. She should have. The decision came at noon: collective documentation, collective filing with the regional PAC authority, formal challenge to Merit's territorial practices with the 5-PAC evidence as foundation. Not a war. An accountability process, which was slower and more durable and harder to dismiss. Lena had suggested this framing in the pre-meeting review, and he had agreed, and the room had agreed, and watching the 3 PAC leaders sign the joint filing with her documentation as the foundation was one of the cleaner moments of his 9 years as Alpha. After, Reyes lingered. She looked at Lena with the full assessment of a woman who had been assessing people for 50 years. The Northern Corridor, she said. You've been protecting it. Documenting it, Lena said. Same thing, Reyes said. In my experience, you only document with that level of care what you're trying to protect. She looked at Riven. She knows your territory better than you did. She does, he said. That's worth something, Reyes said, to both of them. She left. The compound was quiet after. The particular quiet of something concluded, tension that had been building for weeks finding a release valve. He found Lena in the conference room packing up the last of her materials, the bound reports, the maps. She looked up when he came in. Reyes liked the Eastfield parallel, she said. That's the one that moved her. The whole room moved, he said. You moved the room. She shook her head. The documentation moved the room. You made the documentation, he said. 3 years of it, alone in the field, because you believed the corridor mattered. He came to the table. Lena. She looked at him. The different conversation, he said. That I said we'd have. Yes, she said. I've been wrong about a lot of things this year, he said. I made a decision without enough information, and I trusted the wrong person to fill the gaps, and I spent 8 months managing the appearance of certainty I didn't have. He held her gaze. I'm not wrong about this. She set down the report she was holding. I've been alone a long time, she said. By choice, mostly. It's efficient. I know how it works. She looked at him. You are the most inconvenient possible exception to a very functional system. I know, he said. Your pack is going to have opinions. They already have opinions, he said. Kara told me Wednesday that I look like someone who finally figured something out. Marcus started bringing lunch for 2 people on Monday without being asked. She almost laughed. The full version, real, unguarded, the laugh of someone who had been given something unexpected and hadn't yet built a managed response for it. He kissed her, properly this time, without the 3-hour meeting on the horizon, without the pressure of what needed to happen next, just the full fact of it, and she kissed him back with both hands, and the specific energy of someone who had made a decision and was done being careful about it. April came to the Gallatin Range with the specific patience of a season that knew it was going to win eventually, and wasn't in a hurry. Lena documented the spring pup arrivals the 2nd week of April. 4 pups, the alpha female's 2nd litter, born in the Denning site in the northwest quadrant that was now on every Ashvale territory map in the appropriate registry. She photographed them at dawn, systematic and methodical, and sent him the best one that evening with no message, because the image said everything. He texted back, the stubborn one is already going her own direction. She looked at the photo. He was right, 1 pup, slightly apart from the others, investigating something in the opposite direction from the group. She takes after someone, she sent back. His reply took 30 seconds. Unclear which of us you mean. She sat in her truck at the edge of the corridor with the spring light going gold and her boots still muddy, and thought about that for a moment. The merit accountability process was moving through the regional PAC authority, slower than a conflict would have been, faster than he'd expected once the 5-PAC documentation was in front of the review board. Blackridge Environmental had suspended operations pending investigation. The development plan had been redesigned with the water management correction and the road rerouted 80 meters north, clear of the Denning site and the primary water source. Derek Holt had cooperated fully in the tribunal. His testimony had filled the gaps in the documentation and confirmed the timeline. He was gone from Ashevale and would not work in PAC territory management again, which was appropriate. The northern corridor was intact. She got out of the truck and walked the last quarter-mile to the northwest quadrant in the evening light, and sat at a distance from the Denning site and watched. The pups were out, all 4 of them, unsteady and determined, testing the world with the comprehensive lack of caution of something brand new. Greystone was watching from the den entrance with the specific patience of a mother who had learned to let things happen within range. Lena photographed them for 20 minutes. She heard him before she saw him, the specific sound of his footstep on the corridor trail, familiar now, and she moved over on the log she'd found for the sitting without looking up. He sat beside her. He looked at the pups. The stubborn one tried to climb the rock outcropping, he said, low. How far did she get? Halfway. Then Greystone came and got her. She'll try again tomorrow, Lena said. Yes, he said, she will. The pups were doing what pups did, chaotic and purposeful in equal measure, learning the shape of their world one small catastrophe at a time. Dusk came around the side of the den and the pups descended on him with complete confidence that he could handle whatever they brought, and he could, and he did. She felt Ravan's shoulder against hers, just the contact, easy and present, the closeness of 2 people who had found their preferred distance and stopped maintaining the performance of more space than they needed. Kara wants you to come to the spring dinner, he said. I know. She asked me directly. She went around me. She said you'd overthink the invitation. Lena glanced at him. She was right. He looked at the pups. Are you coming? Yes, she said. I already told her yes. He was quiet for a moment. She could feel him working through the thing he was going to say, not finding the words so much as deciding to use the ones he had. The corridor, he said. The access agreement expires in October. I know. I'd like to renegotiate the terms. She looked at him. Expanded access, he said. Full territory, not just the corridor. Formal documentation partnership with the PAC's territory management team. He held her gaze. And whatever other terms make sense. That's a significant expansion, she said. Yes. What are the other terms? He looked at her with the green eyes that were direct in the way she'd come to understand as simply how he was, not performing honesty, just constitutionally unable to be otherwise when it mattered. Stay, he said, in Bozeman, in the territory. A pause. I'm aware that's a large ask. It's a very large ask, she said. I know. He looked at the pups again. I also know that you've been building a home here for 3 years without calling it that. The corridor, the PACs, the data that only exists because you stayed long enough to collect it. He looked back at her. You already belong to this land. I'm asking if you want to belong to it formally. She looked at the Denning site. At Greystone, patient at the entrance, at the 4 pups discovering the world with everything they had. She thought about 12 placements, the habit of leaving, the practiced efficiency of being adjacent to things rather than in them. She thought about driving 4 hours to sit in a lobby with a thermos and not leaving when she was told to. She thought about Sector 7 at 6:15 in the morning, and the silence that was comfortable, and the data that mattered, and a man who had learned to listen when the information required it. The access agreement, she said. Full territory, documentation partnership, and, she turned to look at him. And I'm keeping the research grant. I'm not a PAC member, I'm a researcher who works with the PAC. That distinction matters to me. It's not in conflict with what I'm asking, he said. Good. She looked at the pups. Then yes. He didn't say anything. He put his arm around her shoulders and she leaned into the solid fact of him, and the stubborn pup tried the rock outcropping again and made it 3/4 of the way up before Greystone intervened, and the Gallatin range went gold in the last of the April light, and the corridor was intact, and the packs were intact, and the data was solid, and everything, including this, was exactly what it had been built to be. She stayed. It felt, in the end, exactly like what it was.